My wife handed me divorce papers while I was in the ICU. Sign it. I need a strong husband, not a man who can't walk. I signed without saying a word. She smiled. She didn't realize whose name was on the paper. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. The fluorescent lights in Cedar Ridge Memorial Hospital hummed with the kind of persistent buzz that made a person's teeth ache. Kevin Rourke had been staring at the water-stained ceiling tile above his bed for 3 hours, counting the brown spots that bloomed across its surface like rust on metal. 17. He'd counted them so many times he could close his eyes and still see their shapes. His legs lay beneath the thin hospital blanket, unmoving. Not paralyzed. The doctors had been clear about that. The spinal injury would heal. 6 months, maybe 8. Physical therapy, pain management, a long road back to walking, but not permanent. That word had been their gift to him, wrapped in clinical detachment, not permanent. Helen hadn't looked relieved when they said it. The machines beeped their steady rhythm beside him. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, all the metrics that proved he was alive, even if he couldn't stand up to prove it himself. Through the window, he could see the Tennessee River moving slow and brown in the October afternoon, and beyond it, the skeletal frames of factories that had closed before Kevin was born. Cedar Ridge had always been a town caught between what it was and what it would never be again. Footsteps approached from the hallway. Kevin knew them without looking. Helen's walking pattern had a particular cadence. Quick, efficient, purposeful. She never wandered. Every step had a destination. She appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, her thumb scrolling across the screen. She didn't look up immediately. When she did, her expression was carefully neutral, the kind of face people practiced in mirrors before difficult conversations. "Kevin," she said. Not a question, not quite a greeting, just his name, flat and declarative. "Helen." He kept his voice even. 3 weeks in this bed had taught him that emotion was expensive. Better to save it. She moved to the foot of his bed, positioning herself with her back to the window. The afternoon light caught in her blonde hair, creating a halo effect that would have been beautiful if Kevin didn't know what was coming. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, typed something quick, then set it face down on the mobile tray table. "We need to talk," she said. Kevin almost laughed. Those 4 words, the preamble to every ending. "Okay," he said instead. Helen crossed her arms. It was a defensive posture, but she turned it into something that looked like authority. "I've been thinking about us, about this." She gestured vaguely at the room, at him, at the machines keeping track of his broken body. "All right, don't do that," she said, and for the first time, there was heat in her voice. "Don't just agree. Don't make this easy. What would you prefer?" She exhaled hard through her nose. "I prefer honesty. I prefer if we could just be real about what this is." Kevin waited. The machines beeped. Outside, a car alarm started up in the parking lot, shrill and insistent, then stopped. "I can't do this," Helen said. The words came out rushed, like she'd been holding them behind her teeth for days. "I can't live like this. I need stability. I need someone who can stand on his own, literally and figuratively." There it was, clean and sharp. "I understand," Kevin said. "Do you?" She leaned forward slightly. "Because you're acting like this doesn't matter. Like you don't care. Would you prefer if I begged? I'd prefer if you acted like a human being instead of a—" She stopped, catching herself. "Never mind." Kevin shifted slightly in the bed. Pain lanced up his spine, white-hot and immediate. He breathed through it, waiting for it to recede. "What did the lawyer say?" Helen blinked. "What? The lawyer? You've seen one, right? That's what the texts are about." Her face went carefully blank. "You don't know that. You've been typing on your phone every time you visit. Short messages, quick responses. That's not your friends. That's business. And the only business you have right now is this." He gestured between them. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. The paper made a crisp sound as she set it on the tray table next to her phone. "The lawyer said it would be simple," she said. "We don't have kids. We rent. The car is in your name. I'm not asking for support or anything like that. I just want. She trailed off. Out, Kevin finished. Yes. She said it like an admission. I want out. The machines beeped. The river flowed. Somewhere down the hall, someone's family was laughing about something, the sound carrying through the sterile corridors like it didn't belong here. Kevin reached for the envelope. His hands worked fine. They'd been lucky that way. Everything from the waist down was the problem. He pulled out the papers, scanned them. Standard divorce petition. Irreconcilable differences. Division of minimal assets. Her name at the bottom, already signed in blue ink. There's a pen, Helen said quietly. He found it clipped to the inside of the envelope. Black plastic. Cheap. The kind lawyers kept in bulk. Kevin. Her voice had shifted. Softer now. Almost gentle. I know this seems cruel. I know the timing is terrible. But staying together when we both know it's over, that would be crueler. For both of us. He looked up at her. Really looked. She was 31, same as him. Pretty in a careful way. Hair always styled. Makeup always right. Clothes always pressed. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, drove 2 hours each way to Knoxville every day because that's where the money was. She'd been doing it for 3 years. Kevin used to think it was dedication. Now he wondered if she'd just been looking for a reason to leave. You're right, he said. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment that he wasn't fighting. Kevin uncapped the pen. The paper had a line marked with a yellow tab. Sign here. He pressed the tip to the page and wrote his name. Kevin James Rourke. The signature looked the same as it always had. Funny how that worked. Everything could change except the shape of your own name. He handed the papers back to her. Helen took them, checked the signature, then slid them back into the envelope. Her hands were shaking slightly. Kevin noticed, but didn't comment. I'll file these tomorrow, she said. The lawyer said it takes about 90 days. Uncontested. No court appearance needed. Okay. Your insurance will cover your hospital stay. And the rehabilitation. I checked with HR. You'll be on short-term disability for 6 months, then long-term if you need it. You've done your research. I wanted to make sure you be taken care of. She said it like it mattered. Like checking his insurance coverage absolved something. Kevin nodded. Appreciated. Helen stood there for another moment, the envelope clutched in both hands. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it this time. For what it's worth, she said, I did love you. Once. I know, and I'm sorry. About the accident. About the timing of all this. I'm sorry it worked out this way. Me too. She picked up her phone, slid it into her purse, adjusted the strap on her shoulder. Kevin watched her perform these small rituals of departure, these tiny movements that signaled the end of things. Goodbye, Kevin. Goodbye. She turned and walked toward the door. Her heels made soft clicking sounds on the linoleum. At the threshold, she paused, her back still to him. You'll be okay, she said. Not a question. A statement. Maybe a hope. Yeah, Kevin said. I will. Helen left without looking back. The door swung closed behind her with a pneumatic hiss. Kevin lay in the sudden silence, listening to the machines count time for him. Through the window, the river kept moving. The factory stayed empty. The world continued exactly as it had before. He closed his eyes and let the memory wash over him. Not of Helen leaving. That was too fresh, too immediate. But of before, of when they'd met. 7 years earlier, Kevin had been working 2 jobs. Days he spent at a marina on Wattsbar Lake, repairing fiberglass hulls and replacing outboard motors for people who owned boats they barely used. Nights he spent in the cramped apartment he rented above a taxidermy shop, writing code on a laptop held together with duct tape and determination. He'd met Helen at the marina. She'd come in with her father, who owned a cabin cruiser that needed its steering system replaced. Kevin had been under the dashboard, his hands slick with grease, when he'd heard her voice for the first time. How long will it take? She'd asked. He'd crawled out from under the console. She'd been standing on the dock in a yellow sundress, sunglasses pushed up on her head, looking at her phone. 2 days, maybe 3, Kevin had said. Depends on whether the part arrives on time. She'd looked at him then. Actually looked. You're young. 24. You know what you're doing? Kevin had wiped his hands on a rag. Been working on boats since I was 16. I know what I'm doing. Her father had laughed, a big, barrel-chested laugh that echoed across the water. Kids got confidence. I like that. They'd started talking. Helen had been working at a medical supply company at the time, doing administrative work she hated. She'd asked Kevin about himself, where he was from, what he wanted. Kevin had told her about the boats, about the apartment, about the code he wrote at night. What kind of code, she'd asked. Logistics platform. Supply chain management for small manufacturers. Most of them can't afford the big systems, so they use spreadsheets and clipboards. I'm building something simpler, cheaper. She nodded, but Kevin had seen it in her eyes. The glaze that came over people when they didn't understand or didn't care. That sounds complicated. It is, but it could work. Could. Will. He'd said it with certainty he didn't quite feel. Will work. She'd smiled then. Not at the idea, Kevin realized later. At him. At his confidence. At the version of himself he was projecting. They'd dated for 6 months before moving in together. A year after that, they'd gotten married at the courthouse in Oak Ridge. Small ceremony. Her parents. His cousin Noah. Lunch afterward at a barbecue place. Simple. Cheap. Helen had said she didn't need anything fancy, but Kevin had caught her looking at wedding photos on social media later, her thumb scrolling past elaborate ceremonies and expensive dresses. For the first 2 years, things had been good. She'd gotten a pharmaceutical sales job, and the money had been better. Kevin had kept working on the boats, kept coding at night. The platform had been slow to develop, slower to find users. Helen had asked about it occasionally, usually after seeing another startup get funding or make the news. How's your project going? She'd ask. Good. Making progress. Any customers yet? Not yet. Soon. She'd nod and change the subject. And Kevin had learned not to bring it up unless she asked. Because when he did, when he talked about the architecture or the features or the potential market, he could see her attention drift, could see her thinking about other things. Better things. Things that mattered. So he'd stop talking about it. Stop sharing the small victories. The first test implementation at a furniture manufacturer in Crossville. The referral to a textile company in Chattanooga. The slow, steady growth that didn't make headlines but paid bills. He'd worked quietly, built carefully, and never told her the full scope of what he was creating. Kevin opened his eyes. The hospital room came back into focus. The machines. The water-stained ceiling. The empty chair where Helen had sat during her first visits, before she'd started standing, before she'd started leaving earlier each time. The door opened. Kevin expected a nurse, but Noah walked in instead, tall and angular, with the kind of awkward gait that suggested he'd grown too fast as a teenager and never quite adjusted. He was wearing coveralls streaked with sawdust. He worked construction, framing houses on the new developments spreading across the county. Hey, Noah said. Hey. Noah approached the bed slowly, like he was worried about disturbing something. Came by as soon as I got off shift. How you feeling? Same as yesterday, right? Noah pulled up the chair, sat down heavily. He smelled like cut wood and sweat. Physical therapist come by today? This morning. Said I'm making progress. That's good. That's real good. Noah's leg bounced nervously. He did that when he was anxious. Had since they were kids. Kevin waited. Listen, Noah said finally. I need to tell you something. And I don't know how to do it without just saying it. Okay. I saw Helen 2 days ago at the diner off exit 72. Kevin felt something cold settle in his chest. Okay. She wasn't alone. Noah looked at his hands. She was with someone. A guy. They were. He trailed off. Together, Kevin finished. Yeah. Noah's voice was quiet. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know if you knew. I didn't know if I should say anything. But you're my cousin, and I figured. He shrugged helplessly. Kevin thought about Helen's phone. The constant messages. The way she turned it face down when she set it on the table. Do you know who he is? Kevin asked. Noah nodded. Owns a gym in Knoxville. CrossFit place. I've seen him around. Real confident. Loud. Drives a Dodge Charger with racing stripes. Of course he did. Kevin could picture it perfectly. Could picture the kind of man Helen would choose. Someone visible. Someone who looked like strength. They seemed pretty comfortable together, Noah added. Like they'd been, you know, for a while. The machines beeped. Kevin watched the numbers on the monitor. Heart rate steady. Blood pressure normal. All the metrics said he was fine. Thanks for telling me, Kevin said. You're not mad. At you? No. At her. Kevin considered the question. Was he mad? He searched for anger and found something else instead. Something colder. Something more like understanding. No, he said. I'm not mad. Noah frowned. Really? Because I'd be pissed. I'd be. She did what she needed to do, Kevin interrupted. She made her choice. I respect that. That's really evolved of you. Kevin almost smiled. Not evolved. Just clear. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the sky was darkening. Evening coming on. Soon the nurses would bring dinner. Something beige and overcooked, eaten with plastic utensils on a plastic tray. There's something else, Noah said. And this is going to sound weird, but I feel like I should ask. Go ahead. Are you going to be okay? I mean, really okay. Not just the walking stuff, but all of it. Kevin turned his head to look at his cousin. Noah's face was open, genuinely concerned. He'd always been like that. Wore his heart outside his body. Got hurt easy and forgave easier. Yeah, Kevin said. I'll be fine. Because if you need anything, I know. And I appreciate it. Noah nodded slowly. All right. Well, I should probably head out. Let you rest. Thanks for coming by. Noah stood, hesitated at the door. Kevin, yeah, that platform you were building, the logistics thing, that's still happening. Kevin thought about the server costs he'd been paying monthly. The code base sitting dormant on GitHub. The 3 small clients who were still using it. Even now, even while he was laid up in a hospital bed, unable to walk. Yeah, he said, that's still happening. Noah grinned. Good, because Helen's an idiot for not seeing it. He left before Kevin could respond. Alone again, Kevin reached for his phone on the bedside table. The screen lit up with notifications. Emails mostly. A few texts. He scrolled through them, deleting the automated messages, the spam, the well wishes from people who barely knew him. One email stood out. From a logistics coordinator at a steel fabrication company in Louisville. The subject line read, looking for solution. Kevin opened it. Read it twice. Then he opened his laptop. Noah had brought it from the apartment 2 weeks ago and started typing a response. Outside, night fell over Cedar Ridge. The river turned black. The factories disappeared into darkness. And Kevin Rourke, lying in a hospital bed with legs that wouldn't move, began the careful work of rebuilding everything Helen thought he'd lost. The duplex sat 3 blocks from Watts Bar Lake, close enough to hear the water when the wind blew right. Kevin had found it through a property management website, specifically searching for single-story units with wheelchair accessibility. The rent was $600 a month, cheap for the area, expensive for what it was. The carpet was worn, the walls were beige, and the bathroom had grab bars already installed. Perfect. He moved in on a Tuesday in December. Noah helped, loading boxes from a U-Haul into the living room while Kevin supervised from a wheelchair. Everything Kevin owned fit in 12 boxes. Clothes, books, electronics, the remnants of a shared life, divided and diminished. This is it, Noah had asked, looking at the sparse arrangement. This is it. The first night alone, Kevin sat in the living room and listened to the silence. It was different from the hospital silence, less mechanical, more honest. No machines beeping, no nurses checking vitals, just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the building settling. He'd set up his laptop on the dining table, positioning it so he could work from the wheelchair. The physical therapy schedule was brutal, 3 sessions a week at the clinic, daily exercises at home. But the therapist had been clear. Consistency would determine everything. Miss days, and he'd plateau. Stay committed, and he'd walk again. Kevin stayed committed. At 5 in the morning, he woke and transferred himself from the bed to the wheelchair. The transfer hurt. Everything hurt, but pain was information. It told him what worked and what didn't. He wheeled himself to the parallel bars he'd installed in the spare bedroom, using Noah's tools and YouTube videos for guidance. Then he began. Standing was the first goal. Just getting upright. Supporting his weight for 10 seconds. Then 20. Then 30. His legs shook. Sweat poured down his face. He gritted his teeth and counted. By February, he could walk the length of the parallel bars without stopping. By March, he could walk across the living room with a walker. By April, he'd switched to a cane. The progress was slow and excruciating and entirely on his terms. No one was watching. No one was encouraging him. No one cared if he succeeded or failed. That freedom was intoxicating. At night, after the exercises, after the pain had dulled to a manageable ache, Kevin worked on the platform. The email from the Louisville Steel Company had turned into a contract. They needed something simple: track shipments from their plant to construction sites across 3 states. No bloated enterprise software. No consultants. Just a clean interface and reliable data. Kevin built it in 6 weeks. The company paid him $12,000. 3 months later, they referred him to a machining operation in Cincinnati. The pattern repeated. Small contracts. Regional manufacturers. Companies too small for the big players to notice. Too practical to waste money on overcomplicated systems. Kevin built for them. Charged reasonable rates. Delivered on time. The revenue grew. Slowly at first, then faster. By summer, he was clearing $8,000 a month. By fall, it was $15,000. By December, 1 year after moving into the duplex, he'd stopped counting. He incorporated the business under a holding structure he'd set up years earlier, before he'd even married Helen. A formality, his lawyer had said, just in case. Kevin had filed the papers and forgotten about them. Helen had never asked. When she signed the divorce documents, she'd signed away any claim to a company she didn't know existed. In January, 18 months after the accident, Kevin received an email from a logistics firm based in Atlanta. They'd heard about his platform. They wanted to talk about acquisition, or partnership, or something. The email was vague, but the interest was real. Kevin scheduled a call. The conversation lasted 45 minutes. The firm CEO did most of the talking, explaining their vision, their growth trajectory, their need for better regional tools. Kevin listened, asked careful questions, and revealed nothing. At the end of the call, the CEO made an offer. $2 million for full acquisition. Clean sale. Kevin could stay on as a consultant or walk away. His choice. Kevin thanked him for the offer and said he'd think about it. He hung up and stared at the lake through his window. The water was gray and choppy. January wind. Cold rain. He thought about $2 million. About what that meant. About what Helen would have done if she'd known. Then he called his lawyer. I don't want to sell, Kevin said. Okay, the lawyer replied. What do you want? I want to structure it as a merger under the holding company. I want operational control. I want my name off the public filings. And I want to make sure no one can ever claim I owe them anything from before the deal closed. That's specific. It needs to be. The lawyer was quiet for a moment. Who are you protecting this from? Does it matter? No, I suppose it doesn't. The deal took 3 months to structure. Kevin flew to Atlanta twice, both times walking with a cane, both times declining offers of assistance. The firm's lawyers were thorough. Kevin's lawyer was more thorough. In the end, Kevin got exactly what he wanted: a merged entity, operational control, and complete legal separation from anything that had come before. The agreement was signed in April. Kevin returned to Cedar Ridge, walked into his duplex, and sat in the silence of his own success. Helen's life had taken a different trajectory. She'd moved to Knoxville after the divorce was finalized, found an apartment near the gym where her new boyfriend worked, posted photos from rooftop bars and restaurant patios, wrote captions about new beginnings and finding myself and healing journeys. Kevin saw the post occasionally. Facebook suggested her profile despite the divorce, despite the separation, despite everything. He'd scrolled past most of them, but sometimes he looked, not out of longing, just curiosity, the same way you'd watch a storm move across the lake, interested but detached. The gym owner's name was Tyler. He was 35, divorced twice, drove a Charger with racing stripes exactly as Noah had described. His social media was full of shirtless photos and motivational quotes about grinding and hustling and never settling. Helen appeared in his posts for 6 months, then less frequently, then not at all. Kevin learned from Noah, who heard from his girlfriend, who heard from a co-worker, that things had ended badly. Tyler had been seeing other women. Helen had been spending money she didn't have. The apartment had been too expensive. The lifestyle unsustainable. By the fall, Helen was back in Cedar Ridge, living with a friend, working the same pharmaceutical sales job, but with less enthusiasm and fewer commissions. Kevin heard all this secondhand, through the small-town network of gossip and connection. He never reached out, never asked, just filed the information away like data points in a spreadsheet. In December, Noah mentioned seeing Helen at the grocery store. She looked tired, he said. Older. She'd asked about Kevin, whether he was still around, whether he'd recovered from the accident. What did you tell her? Kevin asked. Noah shrugged. That you were doing fine. Walking again. Keeping busy. Did she ask anything else? If you were seeing anyone? Kevin raised an eyebrow. And I said I didn't know, which is true. You don't exactly advertise your personal life. There's nothing to advertise. Noah had given him a long look. You could date, you know. You're allowed to move on. I have moved on. Have you? Kevin didn't answer, because the truth was complicated. He didn't miss Helen, not really. Didn't long for her or wonder what might have been. But he hadn't exactly moved forward either. He'd moved sideways, built something new while keeping something old alive in his chest. Not love, not anger, something harder to name. The knock came on a Saturday afternoon in late March. Kevin was at his desk, reviewing a contract proposal from a distribution company in Memphis, when he heard the sharp rap against the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. Noah usually texted first. The landlord only showed up when rent was late, and Kevin paid automatically through the bank. He set down his pen, grabbed his cane, and walked to the door. The walk was steady now. No pain, no limp, just a slight stiffness on cold mornings. He'd come a long way from the hospital bed. Through the peephole, he saw her. Helen stood on his doorstep, hands shoved into the pockets of a jacket that looked too thin for the weather. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup. Her face was puffy, like she'd been crying or hadn't slept. Or both. Kevin's hand stayed on the doorknob. He could pretend he wasn't home. Could wait for her to leave. Could avoid whatever this was. Instead, he opened the door. Helen's eyes went wide when she saw him standing. Actually standing. Her gaze dropped to the cane, then back to his face. Kevin, she breathed. Helen, I didn't know if you'd. She gestured vaguely at him, at his legs, at his ability to be vertical. They said you were walking, but I didn't know if. I am. She nodded rapidly, her eyes filling with tears. That's good. That's really good. I'm glad. Kevin waited. Rain was starting to fall, light and cold. Helen hugged herself against it. Can I come in? She asked. Every instinct told him to say no, to close the door, to end this before it began. But curiosity won out. The same curiosity that made him look at her social media posts, that made him listen when Noah mentioned her name. Yeah, he said, stepping aside. Come in. Helen entered slowly, like she was expecting a trap. She looked around the duplex at the sparse furniture, the laptop on the dining table, the parallel bars still set up in the spare bedroom, visible through an open door. You live here, she said. Not a question, an observation. I do. It's nice. It's functional. She turned to face him. I didn't know where you'd gone. After the hospital, Noah wouldn't tell me. Said it wasn't his place. It wasn't. Right. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry for showing up like this. I didn't know how else to. How did you find me? White pages. Online directory. There's only one Kevin Rourke in Cedar Ridge. Kevin closed the door and leaned on his cane. What do you want, Helen? The directness seemed to catch her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. I wanted to see how you were doing. I'm doing fine. I can see that. Her voice broke slightly. You look good. Really good. Strong. Is that all? No. She shook her head. No, I needed to talk to you. About everything. About what happened. About the choices I made. Kevin gestured to the couch. Sit. She did, perching on the edge like she might need a run. Kevin took the chair opposite, his chair, where he sat every night after work, where he'd taught himself to stand again through sheer force of will. Helen stared at her hands. I heard you're doing well. Business-wise. From who? People talk. Small town. What do they say? That you built something? Some kind of tech company? That you sold it for a lot of money? Kevin's expression didn't change. People talk a lot. So it's not true. I didn't say that. Helen looked up at him, her eyes searching. You never told me. About what you were building. How big it could be. You never asked. I asked. You asked if I had customers. You asked if it was making money. You never asked what it could become. She flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? I was working 60 hours a week, driving 4 hours a day, trying to keep us afloat while you were. She stopped. While I was what? Working on boats and coding at night, living like we had all the time in the world. Kevin leaned back in his chair. Is that what you thought I was doing? Living like I had time? What else was I supposed to think? That I was building something that takes years to build. That real success doesn't happen overnight. That patience is strategy, not stalling. Helen's face crumpled. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know. You never showed me. You never let me in. Because you laughed. What? Every time I talked about it, about the potential, about the plan, I could see in your eyes. You thought it was a hobby, something to keep me busy. You wanted results, Helen. You wanted proof. And I couldn't give you that yet, so I stopped trying. She was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking. I believed in you, before anyone else, before any of this. I believed in you when you were nobody. The words hung in the air between them. Kevin felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. That's not true, he said quietly. It is. I was there when you believed in the version of me that could give you something. The boat mechanic who was confident. The guy who had ambition you could understand. But the moment that changed, the moment I couldn't walk, the moment I became an inconvenience, you left. That's not. You left while I was in a hospital bed. Helen, you brought divorce papers to my room and made me sign them while machines were keeping track of whether I lived or died. I was scared. Her voice was small. I was terrified. You were broken, and I didn't know how to handle it. So you ran. So I made a mistake. She looked at him with something desperate in her eyes. I made a horrible mistake, and I've been paying for it ever since. Do you know what my life has been like? Do you know how hard it's been? Kevin said nothing. Helen continued, words tumbling out faster now. Tyler was a disaster. He cheated on me with 3 different women. I spent all my savings trying to keep up with him, trying to be the person he wanted. I lost my apartment, lost my friends, lost everything. I'm sorry that happened. Are you? She laughed, bitter and sharp. Because you don't sound sorry. You sound cold. What would you like me to sound like? Hurt, angry, something, anything other than this nothing. Kevin studied her. She was right, in a way. He felt nothing. Or rather, he felt something so far beyond anger that it had circled back around to calm. To clarity. I was hurt, he said. I was angry. I spent 6 months learning to walk again while you posted pictures from bars and wrote about healing. I built a company from a hospital bed while you moved in with another man. So yes, Helen, I felt things. I just don't feel them anymore. Because you're successful now. Because you have money. Because you won. Because I learned what you really are. She recoiled like he'd slapped her. What I really am. Someone who measures people by what they can give you. I wasn't useful anymore, so I wasn't worth keeping. It's simple. Clean. I respect it, even if I don't like it. That's not who I am. Isn't it? Helen stood abruptly. I came here to apologize. To try to make things right. But you're twisting everything. Making me into some kind of villain. I'm not making you anything. I'm describing what happened. You're punishing me. No. Kevin stood as well, balanced on his cane. I'm just not saving you. Helen stared at him. The rain outside had picked up, drumming against the windows. I deserve something. For the years I put in. For supporting you when you had nothing. You deserve exactly what you chose. I believed in you. No, Kevin said again, his voice steady and final. I believed in me. You believed in results. There's a difference. Helen's face twisted. You've changed. Success made you cruel. Kevin didn't respond. Just stood there, waiting for her to leave. When she realized he wasn't going to engage, wasn't going to fight or defend or explain, she grabbed her jacket and moved toward the door. She paused with her hand on the knob, looking back at him one last time. I hope you're happy, she said. Alone. I am, Kevin replied. And meant it. Helen left. The door closed. The rain continued. Kevin stood in the empty living room for a long moment, listening to the sound of water against glass. Then he returned to his desk, picked up his pen, and went back to work. The rain had turned cedar ridge gray and soft. Kevin watched it from his window while the coffee brewed, steam rising from the pot in lazy spirals. April rain, the kind that settled into the bones of things, that turned the lake choppy and dark, that made the whole world feel smaller. He'd been up since 5, habit now more than necessity. His body didn't need the early start anymore, but his mind did. The quiet hours before dawn belonged to him, uninterrupted by emails or calls or the small demands of running a business that had outgrown its original scope. The platform wasn't just his anymore. The merger with the Atlanta firm had brought infrastructure, resources, and reach. Kevin still made the major decisions, still architected the core features, but the day-to-day had expanded beyond one person in a duplex with a laptop. He had employees now, a development team in Nashville, a sales director in Charlotte, people who depended on his vision, his leadership, his ability to keep building. The responsibility should have felt heavy. Instead, it felt light. Purpose had a way of simplifying things. He poured his coffee, black with nothing added, and returned to the window. The lake was churning under the rain, whitecaps visible even from this distance. Weather coming in. The forecasters were calling for storms through the weekend. His phone buzzed. A text from Noah. "You around today? Need to talk." Kevin replied. "Here all day. Come by." Noah showed up 2 hours later, soaked from the walk between his truck and the door. He shook water from his hair like a dog, grinning despite the weather. "Coffee," Kevin offered. "Yeah, thanks." They sat at the dining table, the same one where Kevin had signed divorce papers on his laptop while learning to stand again. Noah wrapped his hands around the mug, warming them. So Noah said, "I heard something." Kevin waited. "Helen's been asking about you." "Again?" "Okay. I mean, really asking. Not just casual, how's he doing stuff. She wants to know where you live, what you're doing, if you're seeing anyone." Kevin sipped his coffee. "What did you tell her?" "Same thing as last time. That you're fine. That it's none of her business." "Good." Noah frowned. She seemed desperate, man. Like she's going through something. She's always going through something. "You know what I mean?" Noah leaned forward. "I think she's broke. We're close to it. The whole Tyler thing wiped her out, and she's back to square one. Maybe worse than square one. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate." Noah shook his head. "You're cold about this." "Am I?" "Yeah. I mean, I get it. What she did was messed up, but she's still a person. Still struggling." Kevin set down his mug. "What do you want me to do, Noah? Give her money? Invite her back into my life? Pretend the last 2 years didn't happen? I don't know. Maybe just acknowledge that she's human, that she made mistakes. I do acknowledge it. I just don't care." Noah looked uncomfortable. "That sounds harsh." "It's honest." They sat in silence for a moment. Rain hammered the roof, steady and relentless. "She's going to show up," Noah said finally. "I can feel it. She's going to come here and ask you for something. And I'll say no. Just like that. Just like that." Noah studied him. "You're really done with her? Like completely done?" "Yes." "Because you found success? Because you don't need her anymore?" Kevin considered the question. It was fair. Easy to be cold when you had money. Easy to turn people away when you didn't need them. But that wasn't it. "Not really. I'm done with her because I finally understand what she is," Kevin said. "And what she isn't. She's not evil. She's not trying to hurt people. She's just small. She measures everything by how it benefits her. And when something stops benefiting her, she leaves. That's all. That's the whole story. So you're protecting yourself." "I'm honoring what I learned." Noah nodded slowly. "All right. I get it. I don't have to like it, but I get it." They finished their coffee. Noah left with promises to check in later, to keep Kevin updated if Helen asked more questions. Kevin thanked him and closed the door. The day passed quietly. Kevin worked, reviewed code, answered emails, took a call with the sales director about a potential contract in Virginia. Everything normal, everything routine, until the knock came again. It was late afternoon when Kevin heard it. 3 sharp raps, insistent but not aggressive. He was at his desk, reviewing financials when the sound cut through the rain. He knew before he looked. Some instinct, maybe Noah's warning, maybe the timing, maybe just the particular rhythm of the knock, told him who it was. Helen stood on his doorstep again, but this time she looked worse. Her hair hung limp and wet. Her jacket was soaked through. Her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, like she'd been crying for days. "Kevin," her voice cracked. "Please, I need to talk to you. You should have closed the door. Should have ended this before it began. But something in her desperation made him pause. Not pity, not kindness, just a morbid curiosity about how far someone could fall when they built their life on shifting ground. Come in, he said. Helen stumbled inside, dripping water onto the floor. She looked around the duplex like she was seeing it for the first time, even though she'd been here 2 weeks ago. Her gaze lingered on the laptop, the papers, the evidence of a life that had continued without her. Sit, Kevin said, gesturing to the couch. She sat, didn't take off her jacket, just pulled it tighter around herself like armor that had already failed. Kevin remained standing, leaning on his cane. What do you need, Helen? I didn't know, she said immediately. About the company. About how successful you'd become. You never told me you were building something this big. We've had this conversation. I know, but I need you to understand. I'm not here because of the money. I'm here because... She stopped, swallowed hard. I'm drowning, Kevin. Everything is falling apart. My job cut my territory. My commissions are half what they were. I can't make rent. I can't pay my bills. I'm barely surviving. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Her eyes flashed. Because you look like you don't care at all. What would you like me to look like? Concerned. Sympathetic. Something. She stood suddenly, pacing. I was your wife. I supported you. I helped you when you had nothing. Doesn't that mean anything? Kevin watched her move across his living room, her desperation palpable and raw. You left me when you thought I had nothing, he said calmly. You brought divorce papers to a hospital bed. You moved in with another man before the papers were even filed. You blocked my number. You told people I was dead weight. Helen froze. Who told you that? Does it matter? I never said. You said exactly that. To your friends. To your co-workers. You told them I was an anchor dragging you down. That you needed someone who could stand on his own. Her face went pale. I was hurting. I was scared. People say things when they're honest, Kevin finished. You said what you believed. And now that those beliefs don't serve you anymore, you want them forgotten. That's not fair, isn't it? Helen wrapped her arms around herself. I made mistakes. I admit that. But I can't go back and change them. I can only move forward. And right now, I need help. I need someone who understands what I'm going through. I'm not that person. You could be. She moved closer, her voice dropping to something softer, more pleading. We were good once. Remember? Before everything got complicated. We were happy. Kevin thought about that. About the early days. The marina. The apartment above the taxidermy shop. The simple belief that wanting something badly enough could make it real. We were young, he said. There's a difference. We could be good again. No, we couldn't. Helen's eyes filled with tears. Why not? Because I left? Because I made a mistake? People make mistakes, Kevin. That's what humans do. We fail. We hurt each other. But we also forgive. We move forward. We give second chances. Some mistakes don't get second chances. That's cruel. That's reality. She was crying now, openly and without shame. I lost everything. My apartment. My savings. My dignity. Do you know what it's like to have nothing? To feel like you're drowning and no one will throw you a rope. Yes, Kevin said quietly. I do. The simplicity of it seemed to gut her. She staggered backward, collapsing onto the couch. I supported you, she whispered. Back then, I believed in you. You believed in what I could give you. The moment that changed, you left. I was scared. You were opportunistic. That's not. It is. Kevin moved closer, leaning on his cane, his voice steady and final. You measured my worth by what I could provide. When I couldn't provide it anymore, you found someone who could. It's simple economics, Helen. Supply and demand. I don't blame you for it, but I don't owe you anything because of it either. Helen looked up at him, mascara running down her cheeks. I deserve something. For the time I put in. For the years we spent together. You deserve exactly what you took when you left. Which was nothing. You're punishing me. No, I'm declining to save you. She stood again, unsteady. What about the company? The money? You have so much now. You could spare. No, just enough to get back on my feet. Just enough to... No, Kevin, please. Her voice broke completely. I'm begging you. I have nowhere else to go. He looked at her, really looked. Saw the desperation, the fear, the genuine suffering. Felt exactly nothing. You made your choices, he said. Live with them. Helen's face twisted into something ugly. Rage mixed with despair. You've changed. You used to be kind. You used to care about people. I still care about people. Just not people who hurt me and then come back asking for rewards. I loved you. You love what you thought I'd become, not what I was. That's the same thing. It's really not. Helen grabbed her purse, shaking. You're going to regret this. One day, when you're alone and miserable, you're going to remember that I tried, that I reached out, that I gave you a chance to be a good person. Maybe, Kevin said, but I doubt it. She moved to the door, yanked it open. Rain blew in, cold and sharp. She turned back one last time, her face a mask of pain and fury. I hope you're happy, she spat. I hope all of this was worth it. Kevin leaned on his cane, unbothered. It was. Helen stared at him for another moment, searching for something, regret, guilt, hesitation. Finding nothing, she stepped into the rain and slammed the door behind her. Kevin stood in the sudden silence, listened to the storm rage outside, felt the weight of her absence settle like dust after demolition. Then he walked to his desk, sat down, and went back to work. Evening came. The rain eased but didn't stop. Kevin made dinner, something simple, pasta with vegetables, and ate at the table while reading contract proposals on his tablet. The work was steady, familiar, comforting in its complexity. His phone buzzed. Noah, everything okay? Kevin replied, fine. She came by. She left. It's done. Noah, need to talk? Kevin, no. But thanks. He set the phone down and finished eating. Washed his dishes. Made more coffee even though it was late. Returned to his desk and worked until midnight, reviewing code, answering emails, planning the next quarter's development roadmap. When he finally stopped, the duplex was quiet. The rain had become a gentle patter, almost soothing. Kevin stood and walked to the window, walked, not limped, not struggled, and looked out at the lake. The water was black and endless. Somewhere out there, Helen was probably telling people he'd changed. That success had made him cold. That the accident had broken something inside him. She'd be wrong. The accident hadn't broken him. It had clarified him, stripped away everything that didn't matter and left only what did. Strength, purpose, the ability to walk forward even when everything said to stay down. Helen had called it cruelty, but cruelty required intent to harm. Kevin had no such intent. He simply refused to participate in her fantasy that the past could be rewritten, that consequences could be avoided, that feelings mattered more than actions. He'd spent 18 months learning to stand, learning to walk, learning to build something from nothing while people assumed he was finished. Helen had spent that same time searching for shortcuts, for someone to carry her, for a version of success that didn't require patience or sacrifice. They both made choices. They both lived with them. The only difference was that Kevin had learned what she never would. That true strength wasn't about who held you up when you fell. It was about standing on your own when no one believed you could. Kevin turned from the window and walked back to his desk, opened his laptop, started reviewing the next day's schedule. The work was endless, but that was fine. He had time. He had focus. He had everything he needed. And for the first time in 2 years, he felt completely at peace. The days that followed were quiet. Kevin settled back into routine. Work, exercise, the steady rhythm of a life built deliberately and without compromise. He didn't hear from Helen again. Noah mentioned seeing her once more at the grocery store. She'd looked right through him, didn't acknowledge his wave, and then nothing. Spring turned toward summer. The lake warmed. The rain became less frequent. Cedar Ridge blossomed in the particular way of Tennessee towns, dogwoods and redbuds painting the hillsides, the air thick with pollen and possibility. Kevin's company continued to grow. The Atlanta merger had opened doors he'd only imagined before. Contracts with Fortune 500 manufacturers. Partnerships with logistics networks that spanned entire regions. The platform he'd built in a hospital bed was now supporting supply chains for companies that moved billions of dollars in goods every year. He hired more people, opened a small office in Knoxville, considered larger headquarters in Nashville or Atlanta, but decided against it. Cedar Ridge was home. The lake was home. The duplex where he'd learned to walk again was home. Success didn't require leaving. One evening in late May, Noah stopped by with pizza and beer. They sat on the small patio Kevin had built, just a concrete slab with 2 chairs and a view of the lake, and watched the sun set over the water. "You ever think about dating?" Noah asked, apropos of nothing. Kevin glanced at him. "Where's this coming from?" "Nowhere. Just asking. You're successful. You're stable. You're not bad looking when you clean up. Seems like you could." "I'm fine. Fine alone, or fine generally?" "Both." Noah drank his beer. "You know it's okay to move on, right? To let someone new in. What Helen did doesn't define everyone else." "I know that." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've built a fortress. And yeah, it's working, but it's also lonely." Kevin considered this. Was he lonely? He thought about his days, his work, the satisfaction of solving problems, of building something that mattered, the quiet evenings by the lake, the absence of drama or complication or betrayal. "I'm not lonely," he said finally. "I'm selective." Noah laughed. "That's one way to put it. It's the truth. I'd rather be alone than with someone who measures my worth by what I can give them. Not everyone is like Helen. I know, but finding out who is and who isn't takes time, energy, risk, and right now, I'm not interested in any of those things." Noah shook his head, smiling. "You're stubborn. Always have been." They finished their beers as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky orange and purple and gold. The lake reflected it all back, a mirror of fire and light. "For what it's worth," Noah said as he stood to leave, "I think you made the right call. With Helen. With all of it. You're happy. That's what matters." Kevin walked him to the door. "Thanks for checking in. That's what family does." After Noah left, Kevin returned to the patio, sat alone in the gathering dark, listened to the lake lap against the shore, felt the spring air cool against his skin. Helen was out there somewhere, rebuilding, or not, living with her choices, or blaming everyone else for them. It didn't matter. Her story had diverged from his, split off into a path he would never walk again. Some people came into your life to stay. Others came to teach you what you wouldn't tolerate. Helen had been the latter, and the lesson had been brutal and perfect. Kevin closed his eyes and breathed deep. The air smelled like water and growing things. Like renewal. Like possibility. Tomorrow he'd wake early. Work. Build. Continue the quiet, relentless process of becoming who he'd always been underneath everything else. And that, Kevin thought, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.